It's August 19th, 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Na Hyun-kyung. Let's check out the stories we're following at this hour. Pope Francis gives one last message on his way back to Rome from Seoul. With regard to April's ferry disaster, he calls for the need to surmount political differences in addressing human suffering. South Korea lays out detailed plans to enhance economic cooperation with North Korea, but the proposal goes unanswered along with Seoul's offer of inter-Korean high-level talks. And a curfew has been lifted in the riot-hit city of Ferguson in the U.S. state of Missouri, but National Guard troops deployed by the state governor patrols the streets to restore calm. In our top story this afternoon, on the flight back home from his historic visit to Korea, Pope Francis answered reporters' questions. He talked about a wide range of issues, but the comments gaining the most attention here in Korea were made about the bereaved families of April's ferry disaster. Connie Lee starts us off.
As promised, on his flight back to Rome from Korea, Pope Francis held one last press conference. Wearing the yellow ribbon, a symbol of the Sewol-ho ferry sinking, the Pope was asked if he was concerned that his meeting with the relatives of the victims would be misinterpreted politically. To that, Pope Francis was clear that in times like this, it's not about being neutral.
After half a day of wearing it, someone came close to me and said, "It is better to remove it. You should be neutral." But listen, one cannot be neutral about human pain. I responded in that way. That's how I felt.
He was also not neutral about the Korean victims of Japan's wartime sexual slavery. He said the women, whom he met at a mass on his final day in Korea on Monday, retain their dignity to this day, even though they were exploited so cruelly. On the two Koreas, the Pope is praying and says he hopes the two countries will be reunited, stating that a divided country causes suffering.
There are many relatives that cannot come together. That's suffering, but a suffering of a country divided.
The Pope also spoke on other issues outside Korea, even commenting on the conflict in Iraq, saying the unjust aggressor against the minorities there, including Christians, must be stopped. He made clear, though, that he doesn't mean to make war. And with China, the Pope stated he's willing to go there even tomorrow, but only on one condition.
We respect the Chinese people. The Vatican Church only asks for liberty for its task, for its work there. There's no other condition.
While a trip to China is to be determined, the Pope's next trip to Albania is set for next month. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
And the Pope's visit to Korea left a sizable impression, not just on the people here, but also on the economy. The so-called Pope Francis effect is being felt across a number of sectors. Song Ji-sun has more.
Although the Pope himself stressed that putting the dignity of mankind is more important than any economic gains, his visit most definitely boosted domestic spending, which was dented by the Sewol-ho ferry disaster 4 months ago. The Seoul-based Hyundai Research Institute estimates Pope Francis' 5-day visit was worth some 500 billion won, or around $500 million US, in the form of brand publicity for the country and spending on accommodations, transportation, and other areas. That's equivalent to how much the Brazilian government estimated the Pope's visit brought to their country last year, and a similar total Korea saw during the APEC meeting held in the southern port city of Busan in 2005. The products used by the Pope had a direct impact on raising the brand awareness of several Korean companies, including Kia Motors and its compact Soul model, which was used by the Pope during his visit. Haechillo Seoksu mineral water also got a boost for keeping hundreds of thousands of Catholics hydrated during last Saturday's beatification ceremony in central Seoul. The religious sanctuaries the Pope visited are also anticipating a rise in visitors, but pundits say prompt measures must follow to label the shrines as benchmark tourist points. Korea's tourism organization says the stops on the Pope's visit will be developed into a travel program dubbed the Healing Pilgrimage Trail. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
And on to inter-Korean issues. The latest indications coming out of the South Korean government are that efforts to improve inter-Korean ties will continue. Yesterday, Seoul unveiled plans to extend economic projects with the North, but experts say not much is likely to change until next month at the earliest. Hwang Seung-hee tells us why.
South Korea's much-anticipated high-level talks with North Korea on Tuesday failed to take place as the offer went unanswered by Pyongyang. Despite the North's apparent rejection for dialogue, the South Korean government laid out detailed plans for fresh inter-Korean economic cooperation. A report submitted to the National Assembly by the Unification Ministry on Monday contains reconstruction projects for the highway that connects the border town of Kaesong to Pyongyang and the railway that links Kaesong to the northern city of Sinuiju. The report also hinted at a possible lifting of sanctions, saying Seoul would be open to resuming trade and existing business with the North and pursuing new ventures depending on the state of inter-Korean ties. Seoul imposed heavy economic sanctions on Pyongyang in 2010 after North Korea's torpedo attack on a South Korean warship. Speaking before lawmakers Monday, Unification Minister Ryu Gil-jae made clear these sanctions will not be lifted until Pyongyang comes to the negotiating table. But experts have ruled out the possibility of any dialogue before joint military exercises between Seoul and Washington end next Friday. They say new momentum in inter-Korean relations may come in September, when a large North Korean delegation will participate in the Incheon Asian Games, raising hopes that sports diplomacy could be more effective than political outreach. Hwang Seung-hee, Arirang News.
But there's still the possibility of North Korean provocations. On the day of the Pope's arrival in Seoul last week, Pyongyang test-fired 5 short-range rockets into the East Sea. New analysis suggests they were a new type of tactical missile that can potentially reach deep into South Korean territory. Kim Min-ji has the details.
North Korea is believed to have developed a new form of tactical missile that could pose a new threat on the Korean peninsula. According to joint analysis by South Korea and the United States, the North test-fired 5 of the new rockets last Thursday into the East Sea. A source within South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff says the new model appears to be different from the North's existing KN-02 missiles or those fired from the 300mm rocket launcher, but maintains their advantages with a range of 200 kilometers and a warhead weight of 500 kilograms. The source said the new rocket, likely to be called the KN-10, is believed to use solid fuel and can be launched from a movable launcher. If fired from the military demarcation line separating the North and South, it could reach the central parts of South Korea.
It can load many more explosives. It is a threat because it does not require advanced preparation to launch and can be fired at any time.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is also believed to have purchased a new personal plane. Made in Ukraine, the Antonov 148 can seat up to 80 people, and unlike his previous plane, which was fitted with tables, this one looks more like a regular passenger jet. The plane, worth some $30 million, shows Kim Jong-un's penchant for not just spending, but for traveling by air, unlike his father, who was notoriously afraid of flying. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
In the meantime, President Park Geun-hye says managing national crises isn't just about countering security threats, but also about dealing with natural disasters and large-scale accidents. At a cabinet meeting on the second day of joint military drills with the United States, President Park said the training exercises, which are mostly focused on countering North Korean threats, should also include how to respond to various natural disasters, terrorist attacks, and fires. A premium has been placed on public safety in Korea since the Sewol-ho ferry accident in April killed more than 300 people, stressing that proper training for emergency situations saves lives and protects assets. The president asked the heads of government ministries and agencies to make sure the nation is well prepared for any and all dangers. In politics, the main rival parties are still battling over the details of a special bill that's designed to investigate the causes of April's ferry disaster. If they can't settle their differences today, they could be facing a longer impasse, bringing about a number of implications. Ji Myung-gil reports.
As they've been for months now, the nation's two main political parties remain at loggerheads over the passage of a special Sewol-ho ferry bill, with the main point of contention being who should have the right to choose a special counsel for the investigation. With the current parliamentary session ending Tuesday, lawmakers have till the end of the day to come to terms on an agreement. Failure to do so could have political implications. For the ruling Saenuri Party, which says giving the committee investigative powers would undermine Korea's entire legal system, they'd face criticism for not being able to move forward with state affairs despite a parliamentary majority. For the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy, interim chief Park Young-sung faces a prospect of intense backlash over first conceding earlier this month to the ruling party on the investigative power issue, but then backtracking on the agreement. The Sewol-ho bill is holding Parliament back from its normal functions with a series of economic stimulus bills in limbo. In fact, the National Assembly didn't pass a single piece of legislation in May, June, or July, despite extraordinary parliamentary sessions, all due to their failure to pass the ferry bill. Demanding action and a full and impartial investigation into the disaster, some of the ferry victims' families are on a hunger strike. They also want to sit down for face-to-face talks with President Park Geun-hye to explain their position. 김영균, Arirang News.
In the year 2012 for Korea was at its record high.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Na Hyung-kyung live from Seoul.
Shopping market thinks the true meaning of creation shines through. One of Korea's biggest national holiday, Chuseok or Thanksgiving, is nearing, and the Korean government says it will make sure prices of produce won't shoot up. The finance ministry says the checks will take place on 28 daily necessities every day starting Wednesday and will continue until September 5th, which is just 2 days before the 3-day holiday. Product prices that will be monitored include apples, beef, and rice. Now, the government also plans to provide financial support, including loans worth $18.5 billion to small and mid-sized enterprises in the run-up to Chuseok. On the nation's trade front, Korea's trade volume with Japan has been slumping in recent years, largely due to the strength of the Korean won and Seoul's move to diversify its trading partnerships. Kim Ji-yeon has this report.
Trade volume between Korea and Japan has dropped to its lowest level this year since 2009, totaling $43 billion in the first half. Korea's exports to Japan, ranging from smartphones and semiconductors to steel, dropped more than 5% from the same period last year. The same goes for imports from Japan, which was reduced by 12%. The Korea International Trade Association attributes the overall drop in trade between the two countries to Japan's attempt to reduce its amount of imports in order to increase domestic demand.
The Japanese government raised its consumption taxes in April and is increasingly trying to nationalize its component and material industry after they were severely damaged by an earthquake disaster in March 2011.
Although Korea's trade deficit to Japan is shrinking, the researchers said the effect may not be entirely positive, since it's a result from a decrease in Korea's imports rather than an increase to its exports. He adds the trade volume between the two could drop even further as Korea is increasingly diversifying trade with other emerging economies. It's also being fueled by the low price competitiveness of Korean products to that of Japan's as the value of the Korean won continues to strengthen against the weakening Japanese yen. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Korea's heavy reliance on raw materials and parts from overseas means its consumption and investment create less value within the country compared to that seen in the U.S. or Japan. A report released by the Japan-based Institute of Developing Economics shows the amount of value added locally in Korea was also lower than that of China, but higher than Taiwan or most countries in Southeast Asia. For every $1,000 spent, the report says locally created value amounted to $757 in Korea. That's lower than the $877 recorded in Japan and $864 in the U.S., but higher than the $670 seen in Taiwan. Despite government efforts to breathe fresh life into Korea's stock and real estate markets through a series of stimulus programs, many investors are still thinking long and hard about where to get the best returns on their money. Data from the Bank of Korea shows that liquid assets, which can be quickly converted into cash, reached a record high of over $720 billion as of the end of June. Now, this figure has been on the rise since May after dropping for 2 straight months in March and April. Pundits say investors are having a hard time finding trustworthy investments, while interest rates at local banks sit at the mid 2% level, the lowest in years. New protests have broken out in Ferguson, Missouri at this hour as a curfew we saw earlier this week was replaced by the presence of National Guard troops. It's the highest card Missouri State Governor Jay Nixon has played since declaring a state of emergency this past weekend. Our Son Jung-in has this next story.
As angry protests continued in the St. Louis suburb of Ferguson, Missouri Governor Jay Nixon ordered the state's National Guard troops to be deployed to try to restore calm and quell days of rioting spurred by the fatal shooting of unarmed black teenager Michael Brown by a white police officer. With the National Guard patrolling the streets, Nixon lifted a curfew of the past 2 nights in the town, where protesters are demanding that Officer Darren Wilson be held accountable for shooting Brown. U.S. President Barack Obama addressed the situation and urged the governor to ensure troops were involved in a limited and appropriate way. He said there is no excuse for excessive force by police that denies people the right to protest peacefully, calling once again to seek some understanding rather than to wound each other. Obama also said Attorney General Eric Holder would travel to Ferguson to meet with Department of Justice officials working the case to call for an end to unrest in the town. This, as preliminary results from a private autopsy commissioned by Brown's family found that the teen was shot at least 6 times, including twice in the head. The results apparently contradict testimonies by eyewitnesses that Brown was shot in the back, as all the bullet wounds were to the front of the body. The prosecutor's office in St. Louis County, which has jurisdiction in the case, said a grand jury could begin hearing evidence against Wilson as soon as Wednesday to determine if he will be charged with the shooting. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Over in Iraq, Kurdish forces say they have gained full control of the Mosul Dam, which has been the center of a fierce battle with Islamic State militants for the past 2 days. Earlier, Iraq's defense ministry had said forces had liberated a large part of the Mosul Dam with the help of U.S. airstrikes, which the Pentagon said had hit some 90 targets in and around the area. U.S. President Barack Obama called the development a major step forward in the battle against IS militants. An Iraqi army spokesman said IS militants have fled to regions near the south of the complex, hiding in homes and offices on the premises. Now, the 20th century was definitely an influential time for art, and our Im Yoon-hee joins me today with an exhibition that sheds some light on the eclectic period. Good afternoon, Yoon-hee.
Good afternoon.
What have you got for us today?
Right, so this exhibition has a cornucopia of different types of art. So over the past 100 or so years during the 20th century, we saw everything from Impressionism art to pop art, so very different styles. And so the Seoul Art Center is currently hosting this exhibition that gives you a tour through the different arts of the 20th century. So take a look.
The 20th century gave birth to modern art, a movement
that contain some of the biggest and most influential movements in the history of art. From the beautiful and delicate paintings of Pierre-Auguste Renoir to the edgy and somewhat frightening works of Damien Hirst. A walk through pieces from the 20th century reveals the twists and turns that have led to today's world of art.
Renoir to Damien Hirst is a blockbuster exhibition that features 104 different original works from 53 leading artists of the 20th century.
Early art of the 20th century came on the tail end of the Impressionist, Realist, and Neoclassical movements. Works that sometimes capture soft edges, but also the reality of life. The Post-Impressionist movement then appeared, along with a string of other movements, revealing artists submerged in a need for something different. Fast forward in time, and the art world is now enveloped in sharp colors and eye-catching images. And it's not just with paintings. Artist Magritte questions reality, and Dali questions perception with his unique sculptures. But it doesn't stop there. Pop art entered the playing field and became a game changer. Sharp contrasting images, lines, and edges became more frequent. Bright colors and odd combinations lined the walls of art. And these pioneering artists opened the doors to new ideas, expanding the boundaries, making it possible for many others to follow suit.
Damien Hirst is an artist who truly represents contemporary art. He was the first to use his spin art paintings, which led to the development of other new ideas and contemporary artworks.
Regardless of the movement and styles, the 20th century contained a range of different artists with different visions. And with just one stroll through a gallery, you can walk through 100 years of history.
So we've seen many collaborative exhibitions before, but this one especially seems to offer a lot more.
Right, so this exhibition is a great exhibition in my opinion. So I was just there yesterday and they just have so many different artists, so many different types of artwork all in one exhibition. So it really is a good chance to check out the different types of artworks. And so, you know, they really are, although they're not the most famous works from some of these artists like Monet or, you know, these artists, but it really sticks true to their style, and so you really do get a sense of the different styles and techniques seen during the 20th century.
So it'll be a good chance to take a look at some of the artworks that were perhaps not not the most popular, but you will get to see a lot of artworks that the artists had during their time. And it's not every day that we have the pieces for sale, but you told me before the newscast that some of the artworks are for sale?
Right, so this particular exhibition, all of the pieces are on sale. So this is run by the Opera Gallery, which is a gallery that tends to sell a lot of art pieces. They're an art dealer. They also have galleries around the world, including here in Seoul, but this exhibition run by the Opera Gallery is offering all of these pieces for sale. And so the Monet piece is actually the most expensive piece there for $10 million, right? And so, you know, this particular exhibition is unique because you get to go see different arts, but you also get to purchase them if you really want. And some people look at as artwork as an investment, and so, you know, somewhere to start. And so although Korea's contemporary art is not as big of a market as it can be or as it should be, it really is a chance to start here.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Uni, for your report today.
It was a pleasure.
Good afternoon, I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. The nationwide rain continues here in Korea, and it's been on and off drizzles here in Seoul and heavy rain down south. Now, this round of precipitation will likely last until Thursday, except in some regions including Seoul, which will clear up by tonight. But until then, we are expecting 200 millimeters of heavy rain in the southern regions and up to 150 in both Chungcheondo provinces. Now, the rain has brought about fall-like weather, putting the highs into the 20s. Now, however, it looks like things will heat back up again by the end of the week. Now, going over to our temperature readings. Seoul will top out at 25 this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will top out at 26 and 27 degrees. And moving over to other regions, Jeju Island tops over to 26 as well. Dokdo hits 24, while Mangkeungang tops into the low 20s. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you, Hyung-young.
All right, thank you, Michelle, for that. That's all we have for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back with more at 4 p.m. Korea time.